Welcome to this week's edition of Rugby Unfiltered, another very special edition. I'm your host, Jan de Koning, and as usual with me, Eugene Lofi. Welcome.
Hi, Jan. Great to be back.
Yes, we've got a full program. We obviously went to the airport when the South African under-20 team, the victorious South African under-20 team, arrived back. So we'll have some input from that. We're going to wrap up the Nations Championship, the first 3 rounds of the Nations Championship. There's a bit of a lull now. There's 2 weeks of no test rugby, and then we've got Argentina. So we'll look at the rest of the season for the Springboks and what happens beyond that. But Eugene, I want to start with the position South African rugby finds itself in. And I know a lot has been said about it, but I mean, we're currently back-to-back World Cup champions. We're back-to-back... Kom ons try weer. 3, 2, 1. We're currently back-to-back World Cup champions. We're back-to-back rugby champions. We're back-to-back under-20 world champions. And we're back-to-back Sevens champions. Also, in the last 12 months, the Springboks have beaten every single Tier 1 nation. That includes all 6 Nations teams and all Sunsard teams. So, it's an incredible place to be. And I can't remember, maybe you can remember, but I can't remember us being this dominant in world rugby at any stage.
No, Jan, you got it spot on there. I think our rugby currently is very, very healthy. And we are a threat to the rest of the world because of that. And it didn't just happen overnight. It took, I think, very good strategic planning, putting the right personnel in the right places, and of course, SARU backing the process. Because if you don't have that backing, it's going nowhere. And then, and we're starting to pluck the fruit now of a few years ago when the process started, Jan. So yeah, I think all the South Africans, and especially the Springbok supporters throughout the world, if you look at social media, are super proud of Springbok rugby. As South African rugby, where we currently are standing.
Yeah, and I know we've said a lot about Rassie, but I mean, this all started back in 2018 when Rassie came back, when he said he didn't enjoy the fact that people were burning Springbok jerseys, and that's because we dropped down to number 6. Now we've been number 1. We've been number 1 for a whole year, for entire year, and we will most likely stay there for a while still, unless something happens in the greatest rivalry. But I think, and you mentioned the systems is in place, and I think what we have to start with is probably discuss and analyze the conveyor belt. And I did speak to Dave Wessels last night, and he explained what they did. So maybe what we should do is first listen to what Dave Wessels has to say about how the conveyor belt, how they get all these youngsters through the system, and what works and what doesn't work. Dave, let's start with the system. I know Kevin spoke a lot about the system, and I know you're involved with the system. But explain to us, how does the system work? When do you guys identify these guys, and how do you guys get them where they win back-to-back World Cups?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing we've got to do is recognise the massive contribution of the schools and the clubs. We're just so blessed in South Africa that rugby's deep in people here, and the resources and the skills and the passion that schools put into rugby is a massive advantage for us. And so our challenge is to try to, out of all of that talent, to try to find the best of the best. And so we start at under 16 level with our EPD program that Herman and Nico and Louis Kuhn and those guys run so well. And we start identifying a group of players, and then those players come through from under 16 again. We see them again at under 18s in camp, and as you know, through SA schools and SA under 18. And we start to look at them further at the under 20 level. But it's not the only way people can come into our system. There's a couple of guys in here, Jack Bernardi, Tom Benning, got a number of those guys who didn't play SA schools, So we also realise that some guys are late bloomers and that sort of thing. So it's also probably a message to those guys who don't make a Craven Week or don't make a SA schools now, not to get too despondent, We don't stop looking, we don't stop trying to find you, and as long as you keep playing and you keep enjoying it, then
so even if you don't get under 20, there's still a pathway for you.
Yeah, I think about 80 or 85% of our senior Springbok team have come through the EPD program, but by implication that also means 15% didn't, So we're very proud of that 85%, but it's not the only way to become a Springbok. And I think what we're also trying to do is make sure that no player gets missed in that talent ID process. We're trying to make sure that we spread the net as wide as we can, it doesn't become dependent on the school you go to or the results you have. We just want to find the best players and give them the opportunity to play. So that's the ongoing challenge.
With the conveyor belt working so well at the moment, there's got to be a bottleneck at some stage.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think one thing we must be careful of is that the margins are always so fine, where we are. And I think one thing, we are where we are because so many people in the ecosystem have worked really, really hard to get us here, and we just have to keep working like that. What we can't do is enjoy our success so much that we start believing everything we do just turns to magic, and it comes through a lot of hard work. And so that's the trick, is to enjoy this for a very short time, but then we've got to go back to work. And funny enough, one of the first things I think the head coach said to me after the final was who he thinks we're going to be playing in next year's series because of the way the other games panned out. So he's already thinking about the next year, So, but that's the nature of coaching again. One of the things is we've got a really sweet spot of staff at the moment, just a really excellent group of staff. I think not only are they great on-field rugby coaches and good technical coaches, but they're good for the young men, and they develop the young men. And I don't only mean the coaching staff. I think the medical staff, to have 30 players available to be selected in the final in a competition that has 5-day turnarounds at that intensity is a hell of an achievement. And that's because you've got great medical staff, you've got great S&C staff. So the whole ecosystem of the staff is just in a good space, and I think the players mirror themselves a lot on how the staff treat each other, how they treat people around the environment, that sort of thing, and I think you see that through the players coming through now. But yeah, guys, as I said, we enjoy this for a little while, but we mustn't get ahead of ourselves. We know that we've done well in the short term, but this is our job is to make Springboks. So our real success is, as much as we enjoy winning the trophies and that sort of stuff, it's actually seeing the Vussies and the Jaco Williamses and those guys run out on Saturday for the senior side. That's the actual job. We were laughing just now on the plane because we figured out with one of the players that me and Fully have been coaching together since before they were born. So he's a guy I know really, really well, and it just so happened that the timing of the Melbourne Rebels discontinuing coincided with when we were looking for a coach. And as I say, he's an excellent on-field rugby coach, technical coach, but more than that, he instills the behaviours and the attitudes of what we look for in a senior Springbok in these young guys, and that's almost more of a job than the on-field stuff, So I'm really proud of what he's achieved, and but I think he'd be the first to say he's not doing it alone. He's got a big staff behind him now. They're all just doing an amazing job.
Yes, Jan, it's insightful to listen to Dave, and he's got a big role that he played, keeping the ship floating and steering in the right direction. Now, for many, many years, there has been a lot of processes in place to get the best players out of schools, out of varsity, and so on, put them into a system. But one or other reason, somewhere it fell apart. We talk about the years of the green and gold squad, and then there was the gold squad, where they identified the kids at 16 years. And then a lot of those kids did go through and play SA schools and SA academy. A lot got lost. And what I like, what the first thing what happened, Jan, is I think when Rassie brought the strategic planning in, Saru, Rian, and Mark and them bought into that. And then they brought Dave in, and Dave understands the system, and he understands especially young players as well. And what happened now, they've got the backing. So the process was set in place. So now a player, when he's identified, doesn't get lost in the system. They got the data of all the players. What I like most what Dave said, that's also what I want to tell parents and coaches of players. If you don't make the SA schools, SA academy side, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You don't need to go abroad immediately to play. Of course, if you get an opportunity, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're good enough, you will somewhere get through the system. So although there is this elite group that they've identified, the gates are not closed for any other player that has got ambition to play for the Boks to make it. But it's hard work, dedication, determination, desire that gets you there. But we definitely have the right personnel now for that conveyor belt, bringing the players through. Some players also fall through the cracks, but somehow they resurface again, and that's part of development. And I've got no critics about how the system is working now. And nobody can criticize it because we are number one in the world, also at junior level.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that the EPD, the Elite Player Development System that's in place, and that's what Dave spoke about as well at length, and you now spoke about, that was actually first started in 2013 by Rassie. And as you rightfully said, the system just didn't work. And maybe because the support wasn't there, maybe, he wasn't given the right support, or the people in that place weren't the right people and they weren't given the right, correct support. And when Rassie came back, that system was there, but it just wasn't functioning. And now, and I think Dave touched on that, it's the right blend of staff that's working. And that's not just the staff in the office. That's not just the staff. It's also the coaching staff. And you will understand that. If you got the right support staff, I mean, you did it twice. You need a good doctor, S&T. You need a good physio. You need a good guy around forwards coach. And then you need to manage this group, So if you don't have the right blend, and we've seen that go horribly wrong over the years, really good coaches just lost badly because I think their support staff wasn't the right, or they didn't have the right people around them.
Kishan, actually, this system goes back long before 2013. It was already, I remember when I coached in my second or third year, around 2003, 4, 5 already, they had the green and gold squads out that they identified. And that's what I actually meant by, unfortunately, then there was a crack in the system that they didn't get pulled through, or sometimes not the right place. But we can call it as it is. You need the right coach. They appointed the right coach, and appointing the right coach and the coaches is the difference between what happened and where we now.
Yeah, I agree, and that we saw in Georgia. They were in trouble against England. Not in trouble, but they were behind against England. Georgia gave them a hard time. France, we saw how France came at them. And it's 5-day turnarounds. I mean, you will know that. I think you guys sometimes had 4-day turnarounds. It's very tight to play like that.
Yeah, and that's why what I also liked in the conversations, a lot of times the back end personnel or staff don't get credited. In this case, absolutely. I'll tell you what, the guys that works the hardest on these tournaments are the doctors and the physios and the medical staff. They really, and to have your players fresh for every game. There's a lot of rugby, it's a lot of contact and so on, and they need to be credited more for that. And then I think we need to go look as well on the conveyor belt where these players are already starting to develop, and that is at schools level. And credit must also go to the school coaches and the schools that have got good systems in place to condition their guys in terms of physical conditioning, mental conditioning, and of course a skill set. So by the time they already get to these camps, they basically have all the skill sets, and it's like you have to tweak to get it together. But they did a wonderful job, and when you're the number in the world, like we were and like we are now again, you've got a target on your back, and everybody comes for you, because that is the biggest trophy you can have. You don't even have to win the tournament, but if you win the champs, it's a big ego thing, and a big boost for a side.
Yeah. Eugene, before we move on to Kevin Foot and talk to him about, we're going to look a bit forward to what happens with this team and these players now. But you spoke about the doctors. So there was an interesting incident at the airport or in mid-flight. So as a team with the Cape Town bound group of players and coaching staff, Kevin and Dave, and as they were traveling towards Cape Town, they were in mid-air when a woman collapsed in the aisle. Dave saw that, and he gestured the team doc, Cupido, to come over and help the woman. But when the doctor arrived, she had no pulse. He resuscitated her mid-flight. They turned the plane around. They went back to Joburg, and they gave her the proper medical care. But he resuscitated her in mid-flight. Initially, we just heard that the plane was delayed by 3 hours, or the plane was delayed, and eventually it was 3 hours. And when they arrived, it's only when they arrived back, because the message that came back, it's a medical emergency, but it's not one of the South African SA under 20 players or staff So, okay, somebody fell ill and they had to take her back. And it's only when they arrived here that they revealed that this woman actually was seriously ill. It was a serious medical emergency. And it was an under-20 team doctor that saved her life. He revived her and resuscitated her. And then she apologies, got taken off to a hospital. And and having a doctor that can stay calm. I mean, the guy's just been through 4 weeks, 3 weeks of really tough grinding work. And suddenly, you're on your way home, and now you got to turn around. You got to, and that's just what really good quality people do. That's the quality people we have in South Africa.
Yes, Jan, doctors are taught to save lives. That's what they do under all circumstances. But you've summarized that there to me, and I've already mentioned it on the program, the DNA of our people. That is our people. The politicians can fight their politics and bring a lot of stuff into that, but that what happened there is the DNA of South African people, and it's great that he was on board. It must have been traumatic for a lot of people around there, but it's done, and they're back home and they're safe.
Yeah,
and she's alive, which is great.
Yeah. Finally, before I move on to, I think there's another interesting little tidbit I want to share. So Gert Kemp was one of the players that came off the flight, and we got a chance to interview him. And right at the end, after we were finished, he was talking about his playing in the tournament and stuff and coming off the bench. And right at the end, I said to him, at least tonight you can sleep properly. His response, it wasn't Afrikaans, but his response was, nou gaan ons braai. So the first thing they want to do when they get home is they want to have a braai. I'm sure there's a few refreshments that goes with the braai, but it's just great fun. So, but that's aside. Let's move on to Kevin. So Kevin had an interesting. I asked him how many of these guys are going to be back next year. So maybe now's a good time to listen to Kevin Foot, the Victorious coach, and see what he has to say.
Firstly, congratulations. You're getting quite used to waiting.
Yeah, no, there was a bit of a delay in Joburg. Unfortunately, some lady fell ill on the plane, but Dr. Clement was unbelievable. Honestly, he was superb. So it's nice to be home back in South Africa, but I'm just very proud of Clement. He did a great job there for that lady.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I mean, we've spoken a lot about it, and I spoke to Dave now about the system as well and how it works and where it all starts. But what happens with these guys? How many do you have back next year? Yeah. And what happens with them now?
No, so they'll all go back to their unions now, which will be important for them, because they're Currie Cup under 20. Some of them, I think, might even play Currie Cup senior team. In the final 23, we had 7 guys that'll be back next year. So 3 were starting and 4 on the bench, which is great for us. Last year we had 5 guys return. But besides that, I think we worked out there's probably about 19, 20 guys that have played this year for the Junior Springboks will be back next year.
Guys that weren't in Georgia.
So guys like Christian Forster, for example, he was with us. Potgieter played so well in the TRCA. He was with us. Altus Robbie, he was with us. So there's a lot of guys that hopefully AJ Meyer is going to be back playing with us again. So lots of guys who've been in the system and been in our camps, they'll come back to us.
Yeah. And tell me the continuity. I know from last year you just mentioned 5 and 7, but continuity, how important is that even at this level?
No, it's massive. I mean, just to have that experience at a World Cup, playing on 5-day turnarounds, experiencing that pressure, seeing the physicality of World Cup, it's going to be excellent for our guys. Now they've sort of go in with eyes wide open next year. They've got a nice leadership group that'll be with us again, so it's very, very important for us.
And these guys, you hope not too many get drawn into this Springbok senior setup.
Yeah, look, I think we're very happy, and that's our job, isn't it, to make sure that these guys go on to play Springboks. And luckily that we had the TRC and the TRCA and our trip to Georgia, so we had already started building a lot of depth in certain positions. Guys like Akabakwana, he got man of the match against the All Blacks in TRC, but we told him initially he wasn't going to come to the World Cup because we thought Siaya would be available. Siaya gets injured and Aka's there, so it just works out like that. So creating depth and making sure that we've got a good system is important for us. Yeah, Yaku, Vusi, I mean, even Hash has been called into the squads. Batu, I think that, I'm also really proud of our coaches and what they're doing and our whole staff to develop these guys so that when they do step up, they can actually make that jump. But to see Vusi there, I mean, Vusi was came into TLC late, so he was on the bench for us, and I sat him down and I actually said to Bus, we could be really successful at the TLC here, and then you could play Curry Super URC debut. That'd be great 2 months, and then look again, and 10 days later he's playing for Springbok squad. So I'm so proud of him. Yeah, Bussy is an amazing guy. Jaco Williams was absolutely awesome for us last year. He got his call up late because he had been with the Sharks, and Sia got injured, and then I thought Jaco actually was nearly such a pivotal moment against England where he tackles a guy into touch that actually got us into the semi-finals. So, just so super proud of those guys, and there's going to be lots more guys to come if they just stay focused and stay humble. I just think the staff's work ethic is amazing. Malusi is so passionate about our attack, and he does a great job with the backs. This was a younger backline this year, with guys, a lot of 19-year-olds in. So how we coached them was different to how we coached the guys last year. We want to take our time with them a little bit and get them into a more mature space around World Cups, and you could see at times we didn't execute, and so that'll be a good lesson for us. I think Lumumba Curry, incredibly passionate forwards coach, he looks after that, and he does a great job in our scrum. I think our scrum was the most dominant at the World Cup. And then Warren Peterson was outstanding in the lineup. He came in late after Akers left us, and Warren is such a good, humble guy. So I think just us spending more, everyone speaks about the players' time together, but as a staff, spending time together and how we work is also important. So, and then our medical team, we had 30 players available for selection in the final day. No, I don't think there was another team that could say they did that. So they were incredible. And then obviously Zingy and our management and Mr. David's being there. It just really is a really close-knit group, but well supported.
It's so fresh to hear a coach that actually cares about his personnel and his players, and he is humble. Now, I know Kevin for many years when he was still at Kaizen, when he played for the Lions schools, and then he broke. I lost contact, and then he coached UCT, and then he went to Australia, and then he came back. And one thing that I sensed when I was at the capping ceremony, all the coaches had this calmness around them, and when Kevin spoke, I knew what it was about, and that's what I saw on the field as well. Besides the brotherhood, a love for each other and happiness, and if you can keep that culture in a team, and that's why when they were under the pump in 2 of these matches, they could see it through. I think Kevin did a fantastic job, him and all the assistant coaches. And they, coming back to what you said about Jan Kemp or about Kemp, is those 4 or 5 weeks is pressure. And I think the greatest thing for them is just to go back to their people, families, and where they can just chill and be themselves. So I want to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff, and the coaching staff is led by a head coach. That is what it is. And congratulations. I'm super proud of him and Barend and the coaches.
Yeah. Eugene, I just want to ask you one thing quickly before we move on to the rest of the Springboks, senior Springboks. They spoke a lot about love and stuff. Teams also speak about brotherhood. What is the difference just between brotherhood and loving each other? I mean, it's probably a subtle difference.
There's no difference. It's about caring for each other. It's about understanding each other, where you come from, and what your culture is, what your religion is, and accepting each other. And a lot of that in the military was suffering together to get that camaraderie. And you can do it many ways. And I guess that was the role, what Rolf Strolley wanted with Kamsalrad, but it didn't get to that eventually. It's just being the solid people around each other that care for each other. And really would die for each other, put their, back each other, and that's what it is. That is, that is words that I know a lot of men full of testosterone don't like to talk about, but brotherly love, that's what it is. And you can see that they play for each other, they play for the coaches, and they play for our country, and that stood out. And maybe, Jan, on that point as well, that we mentioned earlier about how many players are carrying on next year. It's also a very dangerous scenario if you go across. And I think we slipped up, although we only had 2-week camps. That when we won it the first time in 2003, we had 9 guys playing in 2004, and we came 3rd. So we got bronze. So, but we've got such a pool of players now, and it's also reflecting at the senior side. but what a lot of coaches don't always understand, before you go on the field, start with your tactical training and your strategic planning and your game plans and maps and whatever they call it these days. Become a team, become a brotherhood, and then the rest is easier. Start off making them a solid unit, and then you coach them from there. That's what Kevin and them did.
Yeah. Eugene, maybe that's a good point to move on to the Springboks, senior Springboks. So we've got to the first half of the Nations Championship, the inaugural Nations Championship. The Springboks top the Southern Hemisphere pool on points difference ahead of the All Blacks. Both teams won all three of their matches, bonus point matches, so they're both on 15 points. In the Northern Hemisphere is France topping the pool. But your take on the first three rounds and perhaps who you think is going to be in the final eventually?
Well, it's difficult to. I just think it's a fantastic competition, Jan. And all of a sudden, people, you can hear them on the streets, can't wait to watch the games. It's a different brand of rugby, I find it. But what I found interesting, I don't know, you're the stats guy, that I think South Africa and New Zealand are the only unbeaten sides in this whole competition.
Correct.
And after this first leg, already you could see what teams stood out, like the Springboks, by margins. The New Zealand, France, Ireland, I think I went through a bit of a bump. Scotland showed some tenacity and so on. But what I found great, Jan, that at the end of this first leg, as we can call, if we can call it that, they picked the players that makes the top players of the first series, and so we've got 5 players in, which I think is a true reflection of what happened. We got Damian Willemse at 15. We got Jesse Kriel, who I thought had a fantastic series, at 13. We got Paul de Villiers, the youngster, his first. They put him out at 7. Of course, New Zealand 7 is usually the feature. We got Pieter-Steph du Toit and Malcolm Marx. New Zealand have 4 players. France have 1. Scotland 2. England 2. And Japan 1. So I think it's a good blend, and it's just an exciting competition, and the quality of rugby is also good.
Yeah, I agree. It is. It's also a different competition, because suddenly you don't play the same people week after week. I know we got the greatest rivalry coming up soon, and we'll chat about that. But I think what I enjoy about this competition is you get to play different teams. So you get to play this whole year. So Africa is going to play all the teams in the top 10 again. So we've already played England. We've played Scotland. We've now played Wales. We're going to play Argentina soon on August 8th, 2 weeks from now. Then we play New Zealand, 4 back-to-back games. And then we play Australia also. And then we go for the end of year 2, where we play Italy, France, and Ireland. And that's going to be tough. I mean, that's going to be massive. While we're in good stead at the moment, the challenge is going to be when we play away against France and Ireland on the year end. I think there'll be a little bit less rotating, even though Rassie says his goal is to continue giving guys test match caps. Maybe if we're still in the running and we want to play in the final, maybe we start putting out our A team a bit more regularly.
Yeah, Sean, I don't think his intention is just to give out caps, but what I like, we've got the biggest squad system currently. I think close to 50 players. Again, I'm not talking
46.
I'm not so sure about my facts, but having said that, so we've got basically 3 players in every position, and in certain positions more than 3 in your important positions, or the golden spine, or what it's called, and therefore we can go into this competition with less pressure that if we have an injury, a critical injury in a critical position, that we know it can be filled. And for a coach, there's nothing more that just keeps you grounded if you know you've got that sort of backup, that you can call up into the system. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. A lot of these countries that are from the Northern Hemisphere, especially, again, it's the media. The media. they talk up a game after end of the year tour and say they're coming. So we're coming up there, and I think it's going to be part of this competition. That's going to be great. I must tell you, coming back to that, also, I think the team that's going through a tough time is Argentina. And now even there with their soccer team that lost, I think the morale in the country must be pretty low. And their team has not been firing. They're not getting that momentum. They're not playing that flashy game that we used to from them. So hopefully in these 2 weeks, they're going to lift it. Because we need Argentina in that competition as well.
Yeah. Maybe Argentina's problem is that, unlike us, the bulk of their players don't play at home. Or well, we've got a balance of players at home and away. So we usually, but the bulk of their players playing away. So they only get together a week before the first match, and then they don't have camps like we do. I mean, Russia had lineman camps, and then he had 2-3 weeks before the first test. He had the players together. Just the Bulls weren't available for the Barbados game, and Russia had plenty of time to get the guys together. And everybody knew before the first game exactly who's going to play against England, who's going to play against Scotland, who's going to play against Wales. And these guys all knew. So when they build up for the England game, the players who already knew they weren't going to play, they're going to play next week. So this week they help the team that's going to play. And that's where that brotherhood comes in. It's not selfish. There's no selfishness in that. And that's our big advantage at the moment, is that this squad, although our team will change significantly, because when we go to Argentina next week, we'll have Pieter-Steph is going to rest. Our best player is going to rest. Eben is back. Sia is back. Luit. Then Sasha apparently is also ready. So he's going to be playing again. So he'll be good to go. So there'll be a very different team that play on Argentina. But again, these guys need game time before the greatest rugby rivalry.
Yeah, that is so. And I feel for Argentina, but I guess somewhere in the planning, their strategic planning, they also need to plan so that they can get their players earlier to prepare better for these competitions. But it's a valid point you made. Again, alignment camps, we're privileged that we can have it. And also coming back to SARU and all the unions, they have bought into this. And although some of the unions are preparing for Currie Cup or preparing for URC or whatever, they're releasing their players to go do these alignment camps. And that says something of our nature. And we're coming back to the word brotherhood, that we all bought in to the plan and we're all executing it together. And that's why we are currently.
Yeah, I agree. Eugene, maybe that's a good note to finish on. I know we want to talk greatest rugby rivalry, but maybe the next week, because there's no game this weekend. So maybe we keep our greatest rugby rivalry analysis for next week, and then we got something to entertain the viewers with.
Absolutely, and how great's that New Zealand tour going to be? I'm looking forward to that because they're playing some good footy as well, as they call it. But so thanks for your program, Jan. It's good to see you. Until next time.
Till next time, till next week, from myself, Jan de Koning.
Cheers.